Dear listeners, thank you for your incredible support in helping our channel grow. We're aiming for 1,000 subscribers, so please support us by subscribing and helping us reach this milestone. Now let's start the story. Flashback, Ben, leaving Moscow. I encountered a few other checkpoints on the way to my first Chechen scumsucker, and the actions of the soldiers staffing them were all the same. They acted like I was some sort of god. It was now daylight, and I could see my ribbon rack better. I recognized the Hero of Russia award on it because I was a lucky scumsucker and had one of my own. To me, it was the only medal I had that was worth a damn. The rest were pure bullshit. But what the hell was the one adjacent to it? And how about the one on the top of the rack? The higher on the rack, the higher the award. The topmost one was 3 yellow bars separated by 2 black bars with a small diamond in the middle. The one adjacent to the Hero of Russia medal was more simple. It was 2 green bars separated by a yellow bar. When I found out what Yuri did to me, I was going to kick his butt. I decided it was time for me to get out of my khaki military uniform, to ditch the ribbon bar, and into something that was more suited for my mission. I stopped alongside the road, opened up the back of and was shocked. Yuri and his comrades had outdone themselves, and I temporarily repented of wanting to kick Yuri's butt. The back of was expertly packed with anything and everything I could ever need. Hell, it was even labeled so I didn't have to rip through the bags to see what I had. I quickly found my BDUs, opened the bag, and found they were packed perfectly so they didn't get wrinkled. It was a hell of a lot better than when Jack packed. I always had to ride his, but to make sure he packed correctly, and about half the time I repacked his kit when he was done with it. These guys would have made a hell of a bunch of Marines. I began to change into my BDUs. Yeah, right beside the road behind when a car drove up and stopped behind me. Way too close for comfort. It was cold and I damn near froze in my underwear as I fumbled in my khaki military uniform, which I had set in the back of for my sidearm, pulled it out, and almost swore. It was a POS Makarov. Why couldn't they have given me a Tokarev TT-33? The Makarov was an anemic POS that fired the woefully underpowered 9x18 Makarov, which wasn't even as powerful as the 9mm Parabellum, 9x19. In contrast, the TT-33 fired the very potent 7.62x25 that kicked, but even against level 3 body armor. I made sure the occupants of the car saw that I had a pistol in my hands by holding it up, then the door opened, and out stepped a stunning woman in a dress so short it should have been illegal. She shouted, "Hey soldier, do you need some company?" Shit. I forgot that in Russia, unlike some other countries, soldiers were revered. I blushed like crazy and yelled back the truth. "Sorry, but I have a girlfriend in Moscow." She laughed, staggered a bit. I quickly realized she was drunk, and answered, "Well, she's in Moscow, and you're here, and I am here." I knew I had to do something to dissuade her, so I interrupted and insulted her. "Sorry, but she is much more beautiful than you." She swore like a Russian sailor. "Dumb shit, scumsucker, eat shit and die?" Well, that was rude, so I replied with, "You drunk bitch, train station 304. That had the desired effect as she got back into her car and drove off like her, but was on fire. Damn near hitting me in the process, the drunk bitch. Flashback, Jack and Masha, in Moscow. Masha and Tatiana babbled like crazy in Russian, then Tatiana left while Masha clued me in on their actions. Jack. Tatiana has left to take care of inserting the records into Ben's chart, and her action should correct the issue of the major soon returning. I replied, "I hope like hell this plan works. If it doesn't, I'm screwed." Masha grinned and answered, "Jack, of course it will work because I'm the only one who gets to screw you." Masha knew I liked it when she talked a little dirty. However, I answered, "Masha, not right now and not on Ben's bed, especially after what he and Tatiana have been doing in it. Besides, I have Ben's letter to read." I opened up the letter and was confused because there was a huge wad of cash in it. I figured he would explain it if I read the letter. I read the letter and he apologized for leaving and not being here to be my best man at the wedding, but told me Yuri would be honored to stand in for him. He was also apologetic for leaving me with Major Mike, but he knew I would come up with some way to keep from getting in trouble. I read the last part, which confused the hell out of me, so I looked at Masha and asked, "Masha, I didn't know you had a car, let alone that you sold it to pay off Elena. Why haven't I ever seen your car?" What in Hades did Ben do? He told Jack about my mythical car in the letter, and now I had to try to lie to my Jack. I made sure to hide my surprise and answered, "Jack, I never showed you the car because it is so hard to find parking in Moscow, and the metro and bus systems work well, so I kept it in the garage." He held up a big bunch of cash and stated, "Well, Ben gave us $10,000 to buy it back from whomever you sold it to, and said if you needed more he would give it to you when he got back. Once Tatiana gets the chart fixed, we need to contact that person before they sell it to someone else." I never thought Ben would do such a thing. Now I was in a delicate position with my Jack. I had a few hours to find a Citroën DS like the one I had lied about, make sure the owner would sell it to me, and also ensure he would support my story. I told Jack, I will call him and tell him I want to buy it back. I hope he will sell it to me. Jack was insistent. Well, don't offer him all the $10,000 at once. That reminds me, how much did you get out of it? I lied again. I got $5,000 for it. Now I need to call him and see if he will sell it back to me. However, he was very happy with the car and he might not want to sell it. Jack answered, well, if he gives you any shit, let me talk to him. That was the last thing I wanted. I pulled out my phone and called some of my workers to get busy locating the car and a seller who would support our story. Flashback, Tatiana, in Moscow. I was very worried for my Ben once Masha made me realize how serious the offense was that he performed. I was sure he would end up in a Siberian gulag. Then Masha described her plan, and it was brilliant, but we had to act very quickly before the nasty major arrived. I didn't mention it because of my shock earlier with Ben being gone, but Ben left me $10,000 for Jack and Masha's wedding. I sure didn't understand where my Ben, on a sergeant's salary, came up with all the money he had. But I knew with this amount of money, Jack and Masha would have one of the best weddings in Moscow. I needed to talk to the wedding planner after I finished doctoring Ben's chart. I quickly went to see some of the doctors in the hospital that owed me some favors. Yes, I was going to do whatever it took, short of sleeping with them, because that was reserved only for Ben, to make sure I had all the proper documentation affixed with the proper dates and times. One doctor was very compliant. The other, of course, wanted a horizontal favor from me. I informed him that his wife would be very interested to hear about some of his dalliances with many of the other nurses, and he immediately created the needed documents. Now I needed to talk to some friends in the records department and have them insert the fake doctor's visits into Ben's computer history. What I thought would be easy ended up being very difficult, so I called Masha. Masha answered the phone, and I was shocked when she informed me, Tatiana, Ben left money with the letter for Jack to buy back the fictitious car you told him about. Did he mention anything about this to you? I was secretly happy that finally Masha was going to have to deal with some of the same issues with Ben that I had to continually deal with. I truthfully answered, Masha, of course he did not mention leaving the money to me because he didn't mention he was leaving. But with all the confusion of Ben leaving, I didn't have time yet to tell you we chose the wrong car. Ben loves the Citroën DS, knew all about them, and asked me many questions about your mythical car. Masha scolded me. Tatiana, you should have informed me immediately of this. I was tired of her attitude, so I challenged her statement. Masha, pray tell, when was I supposed to do this? I surely couldn't last night because you wanted to get me off the phone as quickly as possible so you could be with Jack, and then with Ben's disappearing today, I didn't even think about it. The line was silent for a few moments, and I was shocked when Masha agreed and apologized. Tatiana, you are correct. I did not allow you enough time last night, and with all that has occurred today, I am not surprised it slipped your mind. Now you need to remember exactly what you told him about the car. I thought for a few moments, but for the life of me, I could not remember what I told him. I hesitated, then told Masha, Masha, I am sorry, but I don't remember what I told him about the car. Masha hissed under her breath and threatened, Tatiana, you had better remember what you told him or Jack will discover the truth about our lie to Ben. And if he discovers the truth about the lie to Ben, then he will not help you fix the problem of your big lie to Ben. Well, this wasn't turning out like I hoped. So I promised, Masha, I will try my best to remember everything I told Ben about your mythical car. However, while I'm doing that, I need some help from you. Masha questioned, Tatiana, what in Hades is wrong now? I took a deep breath and explained. I was able to get the falsified records from the doctors and, of course, was able to enter them into Ben's medical chart myself. However, the records department refuses to create the falsified appointments in the computer calendar for the records. They know me here, so I cannot pretend to be FSB. However, you have done that before, and they will believe you. Masha took a moment, then replied, Tatiana, I will be right down to take care of this. However, you need to remember all the details you told Ben about my mythical car. I wasn't sure I could, but I did not lie when I assured her, Masha, I will try my best. Flashback, Masha and Jack, in Moscow. I looked at Jack and said, Jack, Tatiana has finished everything other than having the appointments fixed in the computer calendar system. They have refused to comply, so I need to go to the records department and rectify this problem. Jack gave me an unusual look I hadn't seen before, and then he commented, don't tell me you're going to use the FSB ruse again. I briefly thought of lying to him, but I had so many lies going right now it was hard to keep track of all of them, so I confessed. Yes, Jack, that was my plan. He gave me a worried look and stated, Masha, are you crazy? Acting like you were a FSB agent is what got you in trouble in the first place. I'm putting my foot down because I'm sure as hell not going to let it happen again. I did not like Jack being so bossy, so I countered. Well then, Jack, how do you propose we resolve this problem? He gave me the smile I always liked, waved the cash in his hand, and explained, I haven't found a problem that enough cold hard cash wouldn't solve. I thought for a moment and quickly hoped, since we're using the money Ben gave us for the car, does that mean we are not repurchasing my car? Jack laughed and shot down my hopes. Hell no. Ben gave us this money for that specific purpose. However, for right now we are going to use part of this money to fix Ben's computer records. I will replace that out of my savings. I had no other choice than to agree and answered, okay Jack, we both need to hurry to medical records before your major arrives. We left Ben's room and headed to the elevator. I hope Tatiana remembered the details of what she told Ben of the car soon. Now this was interesting. Jack was unusually silent, so he must be thinking about something. I wondered what it was. I was trying to figure out my finances and how in the hell I was going to pull off paying to get Ben's hospital records fixed and then replacing the money spent out of the $10,000 Ben gave us for the car. Unlike Ben, who didn't really need his monthly sergeant salary, I was forced to live off mine, and purchasing Masha's engagement ring and the other little gifts I had purchased for her put a huge dent in my budget. I hoped we could repurchase Masha's car for the $5,000 she sold it for, since that would leave me $5,000 for the bribe, which I was sure was enough. Hell, I actually hoped that $1,000 would be enough for the bribe. We were in the elevator. Masha grabbed my hand and questioned, Jack, a Kopek for your thoughts. I laughed and lied. Sorry Masha that I was so quiet. I was just thinking about how lucky I am to have you for my fiancé. She smiled at me, gave me a hell of a kiss that finished right before the elevator opened. We walked toward the records department and Masha cautioned, Jack, make sure you conceal most of that money. I grinned at her and said, Masha, I know better than to let them see that much cash, so don't worry. We entered the records department, asked to speak with the manager, were taken to his office, and then, flashback, Major M, headed to the Moscow hospital. I was thankful as hell to be off that godforsaken hunk of ice called Thule, but even more thankful to be away from Colonel Maggie. That bitch made my life hell every day I was gone, with constant drilling, inspections, and studying. She loved making me run in the extreme cold weather gear with a full military pack while carrying a heavy as hell M14. She purposely set the initial pace so high that I would work up a sweat and then slowed down so I would cool off and then damn near freeze to death in my own sweat. I also had to keep my gear stowed perfectly at all times, even when I was in the shower. If I screwed up on any little thing, she threw all my gear, including the extreme cold weather gear, outside and then made me recover it. Since I didn't have the cold weather gear, I would damn near freeze to death, and the ever-blowing wind would invariably blow my gear across half an acre or more. When she wasn't torturing me with drilling or inspections, she had me studying all hours of the day and night. I had to read and memorize most of the Marine manuals because the bony bitch would test me on them, and if I failed, then she made me serve KP duty. I was sick and damn tired of potatoes, and if I never saw, peeled, or ate another potato, my life would be wonderful. I don't know if you remember, but the old man made us share a room with bunk beds, and of course, she took the top. Let me tell you, the nights were unbearable. If she wasn't out finding some poor guy to entertain her, she kept herself occupied in ways that made it impossible for me to sleep. The bed shook so much I was sure the top bunk was going to collapse on me at any moment. And to make matters worse, she never missed an opportunity to throw insults my way, constantly making snide remarks just to get under my skin. Thankfully, I managed to get some emails and calls out to friends in certain government agencies I'd worked with in the past. I explained what a great opportunity we had in Russia with both sergeants present and hinted that, with a little guidance from me, we could gather valuable intelligence that would be impossible to obtain otherwise. The pressure they applied on the old man finally paid off. He ordered me back to Moscow. Even though I'd have to deal with the sergeants again, it was nothing compared to the nightmare I had just escaped. Moscow might be freezing this time of year, but it was still a paradise compared to Thule. Plus, if I was lucky, I might even meet someone interesting while I was there. I was surprised Sergeant Reynolds wasn't at the airport when I arrived, so I took a cab to the hospital where Sergeant Blaine was still recovering. I was slightly disappointed that the old man told me to make sure Sergeant Reynolds and that bitch wife-to-be of his had a great wedding. I asked him for some money to make that happen, and he told me to figure out how to make it happen myself. All that I knew was Sergeant Reynolds or his bitch wife-to-be had better have the money to pay for their own wedding, because I sure as hell wasn't going to spend a dime of my own money. We got about 2 clicks from the hospital and hit a damn Moscow traffic jam. Even in the short time I was gone, I had forgotten about these scumsuckers. It would be hours until I got to the hospital now. Flashback, Jennifer, at the military hospital. If I thought waiting for the elevators and everything else took forever in the hospital, waiting for my frickin' traitor nurse Katie's shift to end was interminable. She finally walked into the room, glared at the 3 of us, and demanded, "What the hell do you 3 want?" The JA answered for us. "We wanted you to reconsider dropping the charges on Jennifer's mother, Evelyn." She put her hands on her hips in a defiant position and replied, since Swan Lake was canceled. There's no way in hell I'm going to change my mind. Now if you don't mind, I'm tired and need to get home. Daddy tried to come to my defense when he threatened, Katie, you can either stay here and work this out with us, or you can work every shitty job on every shitty shift in this hospital. Katie looked at Daddy and laughed. You would dare to threaten me when I hold your wife's future in my hands? The JA intervened. Come on, both of you. Fighting isn't going to accomplish anything but get Evelyn sent to jail and Katie sent to Thule. So why don't we talk about this like adults and come to some sort of agreement that keeps both of those things from happening? Katie glared at the JA and challenged. Like hell he would send me to Thule. Daddy smiled at her and answered, like hell I wouldn't. I do it all the time and currently have a major and colonel who pissed me off stationed there. I wasn't sure and perhaps I wished it, but I thought I saw a small amount of fear cross her face. Then the JA once again put in his 2 cents. Will you two stop your fighting and let's see if we can avoid anything bad happening to anyone. Look, Katie, we all realize you have some power here, but Glenn also has the power to make the rest of your career in the Marines miserable. Daddy admitted, yes, Katie, you could raise a stink about my wife and mess up my career in the Marines. But if you did that, my new mission would be, like the JA said, to make your remaining years in the Corps a living hell. So why don't you tell me what you want to drop the charges on my wife? Katie looked at the 3 of us and answered, I simply want the performance of Swan Lake to continue. When Robert was arrested, Olga canceled the performance because no other boy could dance the part well enough to perform at a level comparable to Jennifer's. The JA said, you do realize that Robert committed a felony by having sex with Megan because she is only 15. Katie countered, I looked this up, and because Robert is 18, which is only 3 years older than Megan, and because the sex was obviously consensual, I know that the charges can be reduced to a misdemeanor. It was the JA's turn to counter. We also have him on child pornography charges for sending the pictures to Jennifer and also soliciting sex from a minor. And while Megan is 15, Jennifer is only 14, so the Romeo and Juliet clause you refer to does not apply to those charges. Katie simply smiled and stated, then drop those charges and use the Romeo and Juliet clause to reduce the charges for his consensual sex with Megan to a misdemeanor. Fine Robert, and make him serve community service. If you do that, then I will gladly drop the charges against Evelyn. I sure as heck didn't like where this negotiation had gone, but I kept my mouth shut for now. The JA continued, Katie, would you please step into the hallway while I discuss this with Glenn and his daughter Jennifer? Katie looked at her watch and stated, okay, but don't make me wait too long. I'm tired and need to get home and make my dinner. Katie left the room. The JA looked at both of us and asked, well, what do you two think? Daddy spoke first. This is bullshit. We have that pervert that's been stalking my daughter dead to rights, and the little scumsucker should go to prison. The JA answered, yes, Glenn, we do, and if we don't capitulate at least on some of the charges, then Evelyn will join him in prison. Is that what you want? I was upset that no one had asked me what I wanted, especially since this all involved me. I put on my best prima bitcherina attitude and complained, why the heck don't I get a say in any of this, seeing as it all concerns me? Both Daddy and the JA blinked in amazement. Then the JA answered, you're right, Jennifer. This does concern you, so why don't you tell us how you feel about it? I became a little scared because I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted. I didn't know I didn't want Mother to go to prison even though she beat me. It was the first time, and she was drunk and out of control. I also knew I didn't like the idea of dancing with Ro frickin' Bear and even hated more the thought of him touching me, especially there during the bicycle lift. I thought about all the times that Daddy and Mother had done selfless things for me that they didn't want to do. So I took a deep breath and said, while I hate the idea of dancing with Robert, I hate the thought of Mother going to prison worse than that. I think it's time that I act like an adult and take one for the family by agreeing to dance with Robert. However, I do want some sort of protection for my special place for when we perform the bicycle lift. The JA questioned, what is a bicycle lift? I blushed and answered, I would essentially sit on Robert's hand while he lifted me over his head. Daddy lost it and said, there's no way that perv is going to do that to my little Jennifer. I corrected him, Daddy, there is no choice since the lift is part of the standard choreography for Swan Lake. So he will have to do it, but I want to make sure he doesn't try anything else while he's doing it, because we will need to practice it many times to get it right. The JA motioned to Daddy, and he said, Jennifer, let me talk to your father for a few moments. They moved to the side of the room, and I watched as they had a very animated whispered discussion. They came back, and Daddy said, Jennifer, I think we have a way to make sure that the pervert doesn't take advantage of you. I smiled and questioned, good, please tell me what it is. The JA answered, Jennifer, do you know what plausible deniability is? I affirmed, heck yeah, I'm not a child. It's the condition in which a subject can safely and believably deny knowledge of any particular truth that may exist, because the subject is deliberately made unaware of said truth, so as to benefit or shield the subject from any responsibility associated through the knowledge of such truth. He laughed and explained, having you around is like having a dictionary. We aren't going to reveal the plan, so you have plausible deniability. Daddy added, Jennifer, I am so proud that you made this decision for the good of our family. I know it was the hardest decision you have ever had to make. And I do promise you that we will keep you safe from that perv. I smiled and answered, Thank you, Daddy. Your promise lets me know I will be safe. So do we tell Katie we have a deal? The JA called Katie back into the room and said, We have talked it over and have come to an agreement. I thought it was all over until Katie smiled and said, Oh, I forgot. There's one more thing. Flashback, Alexei at home. I became bored with my game of chewing on the cryptex, in large part because the taste of the plastic was hideous. So I considered other possible actions which a dog might perform, and I arrived at a wonderful new idea with which to test the endurance of my parents. Flashback, Safia, in Israel. I was tired of the twins' obsession with Sherlock Holmes, and even more tired of their constant bickering about it. I decided I needed to do something which would shock them out of their idiocy, so I did what came naturally to me. I started running like crazy, because if they caught me, I would surely be severely punished. Flashback, Todd, on the island. Yes, since the defeat of the masked men, the freeing of the women who were prisoners, and the discovery of Lynn, the woman who spoke English and knew both ASL and JSL, I finally had some hope that my circumstances would improve. Lou took the other women to a beach, then we retreated back into the jungle and watched as a ship arrived and dropped anchor. A skiff was launched from the ship and headed toward the beach where the women waved and yelled frantically. I wondered how in the hell the ship knew to come to this island, let alone which beach to come to. As the skiff arrived on the beach, the women cried and ran into waiting arms. It was obvious they knew the men on the skiff. I looked at Lynn beside me, who shrugged as she figured out what I wanted to know, and she answered, The other women are happy because they have been returned to their family. Then she looked sad and added, But I have no family to return to, so I will remain here. I held her hand to try and comfort her. Lou must have figured out what we were talking about because she held Lynn's other hand. I smiled because now we had a family of 3. The ship left, and we headed back to Lou's cave, where I spent the rest of the day studying ASL and JSL with Lynn while Lou puttered about the cave and made us a meal. That night, I stayed warm sleeping between Lou and Lynn. Present. Ben, leaving the cabin. As I continue to get the hell out of Dodge, I now have some freedom for some quiet thought. Because of what Ivan said, and because I amazingly saw an actual wolf, I contemplate the possibility that Destiny is a shaman, as she claims, or perhaps she is one of the spirit helpers my grandfather told me about. At least the feeling of someone watching me has left, because that feeling gives me the heebie-jeebies, and the hair stands up on the back of my neck, just like the hair on the back of the wolf. I had shared my plans with Destiny. However, I was sure with the change of direction and the chemical suit and booties I wore, it would make her job of finding me harder. Present, Destiny, searching for Ben. After I was interrupted by the dog and fox, and then running away when Ben saw me, I headed back to the clearing to pick up Ben's scent and begin following him again. However, there was one problem. With the chemical contamination equipment he wore, I couldn't pick up his scent. I knew the direction he traveled in when he first left the cabin, so I left in the same direction in hopes that I could find him. As I continue to run, it soon becomes obvious, because of the time that has elapsed, that Ben isn't heading in the same direction as before our encounter. I once more underestimated Ben and vowed to never do it again. I was wasting time, so I realized the need to change my tactics. Sure of my course of action, I stop and begin my search for Ben. Present. Ben, leaving the cabin. Now what the hell is going on? I don't feel like someone is watching me. I feel like every damn animal in the world is watching me. Hell, the damn squirrels are running through the trees behind. It feels like they are actually chasing me. Me cussing up a storm. With all their chattering, I can't hear anything else. I stop, turn, glare at the scumsuckers and yell, What the hell is wrong with you? Leave me the hell alone, or I will shoot your butts and eat you for lunch. They cuss at me as they run away, and then it starts with the crows. A mob of them fly up into an aspen tree and begin their infernal cawing. While squirrels are cute and serve a purpose, food, I never did have much love for crows. They are annoying as hell, whose sole activity is that of nest robbers. I raise my rifle to my shoulder, but the scumsuckers take off. What the hell is next? Damn, I shouldn't have asked. A pair of owls silently fly up, strange as hell because it's in the daytime, land on a branch in the same aspen tree, and begin to stare at me with those huge, virtually unblinking eyes. I look to the sky and demand, What the hell did I do to deserve this? Present, Destiny, searching for Ben. Calling on the animals to show me Ben's location is too much fun because they annoy him and make him act crazy. Plus, It gives me great insight into Ben, how he feels about the animals, and how advanced his shamanic skills have progressed. His ability to sense when anyone or anything is watching him is highly advanced, which I am sure has greatly helped him in his previous life in the Marines. I understand his feelings toward the squirrels. They are excellent food. However, his feelings toward the crows is incorrect and is something I will certainly try to fix. His spooky feeling toward the owls is also a bit warped, and I will need to do something about that as well. Now that I know where Ben is, it's time for me to catch up and trail him. However, I am not sure how to keep him from sensing me watching him. I begin running toward Ben, and the tranquility of the physical exercise allows my mind to finally work it out. Present. Ben, leaving the cabin. The owls leave after looking me over, and finally, I lose the feeling that the entire world is watching me. With my senses again at ease, I take off running. I want to get as much distance between Destiny and me as I can. Hell, I even wish that Bo had shown up by himself, because the last thing I wanted was to be together with Stacy again, because he would have helped me put the miles between us even more quickly. Present. Stacy, going after Ben. With the CUF taking care of the trailers, I stop by my camp, meet with Bill, and ask, I'm going to see if I can find Ben. Do you have any ideas on where he might have gone? Bill smiles and answers, since the electronic warfare conveniently ended, the satellite you purchased for this mission has come back online, and we've been tracking 2 targets that have left the area. The first has to be Ben, and the second is most likely the woman who helped him. He followed a circuitous route initially, but has now settled down and is headed north of here. I question, has everything else been prepared? He hands me my weapons, the 2 revolvers, and the rifle that Ben gave me. Then he hands me a GPS tracker connected to the satellites and says, yes, it's all ready for you. Just pick up the saddlebags for Bo and Patches, and you are ready to leave. However, are you sure you want to do this on your own? We could have a small team travel with you. I smile and answer, with the horses and Wojciech, I have the best team possible for this mission. Any more would jeopardize it. What did you find out about the mystery woman helping Ben? Bill shakes his head and frowns. We didn't find out anything. I look at him in shock and question, nothing at all. He affirms, that's correct. It's like she's never existed. This is one more reason I feel you should bring a team. I once again refuse. Bill, that's not going to happen. I have my phone, and you have the helicopter standing by, so if I have an emergency, you can respond to it. Too many people will scare Ben away, and that's the last thing I want. When I load the saddlebags on Bo, he gives me a dirty look, and I scold him. Hey, if you're coming with me, you need to pull your own weight. I begin to load Patches, and once again she shows her dislike of carrying a burden by trying to bite me. I move just in time and tell her, sorry about this, but you also need to carry some gear. I climb up in the saddle and practically fall off laughing when she lets loose a huge fart to show her disgust at carrying saddlebags. I begin to ride away and remember one more thing. I ride back to Bill, stop and ask, one more thing. What has happened to the man in the exploding porta potty? Bill answers, he's pretty messed up, but our medic has stabilized him until he can be transported to a hospital. Present. Masha, at the cabin with Jack. I cannot believe it. Even after I warned my husband, he chose to endanger his life by trying to disarm the traps in the portable toilets. He could not leave well enough alone until we had an expert here to take care of the situation. I arrive at the practically destroyed portable toilet where a medic is already working on my husband, and my Jack looks terrible. I ask the medic, how is my husband? He answered, he's lucky as hell that only half the trap triggered, or there would have been nothing left of him but tiny pieces. Now the problem is I have to treat him while being careful to not trigger the other half of the trap and blowing all of us to hell. I begin to bargain with him on how I will disable the trap when fortune smiles upon me. Present. Inga, at the cabin with Masha. I run up, stop beside Masha, and look at her husband Jack in the half-destroyed portable toilet. He looks very bad. Masha smiles at me and says, in Russian, Inga, I am happy you are here. Jack is in grave danger because half of the portable toilet trap did not explode. I understand what Masha is asking, so I volunteer. Masha, I will gladly disarm the remaining trap in the portable toilet. She cautions, Inga, please make certain not to trigger it or my husband will die never seeing his daughter. I inform the medic, I am a bomb disposal expert and would like your permission to disarm the bomb. He answers, that would be great because I'm not sure how much time it will take to stabilize this man. I move into the half-destroyed toilet. It is a stinking mess of feces and urine. I notice the foul mixture has covered most of Masha's husband Jack, including his wounds. Then I continue my discussion with Masha to keep her distracted. How have you been feeling during this pregnancy? Masha answers, not as bad as the last one. I think it is because she's a girl. I continue my work, focusing on the intricate detonation mechanism, and say, you might enjoy this phase now, but just wait. Raising a teenager is a whole different challenge. Masha laughs and replies, you're mistaken. With a boy as charming as Ivan and the way teenagers are these days, I'll have my hands full in ways you wouldn't expect. Meanwhile, with our daughter, things will be much simpler. I do not understand, so I question, why not? Don't tell me you are going to start her on the pill. Masha laughs and answers, you forgot about Jack. I am sure he will put the fear of God into any boy that comes close to our daughter. Then we hear some good news. Present, Jack, in the half-destroyed porta-potty. I begin to wake up and feel like shit. The scumsucker Mike had a secondary trigger circuit on the porta-potty bomb I missed, and it blew me to hell and back. I hear Masha telling someone that I would put the fear of God into any boy that comes close to our daughter and correct her. Masha, that's not correct. I will put the fear of hell and me into any boy that comes close to our daughter. I hear Masha's voice crack as she answers, Jack, my Jack, you are alive. I fight back the pain and answer, of course I'm alive. It takes more than that little pop gun of a charge to kill me. I hear a woman's voice which I don't recognize as she orders, Jack, keep perfectly still. You only detonated half the charge that was placed inside the portable toilet. I quickly remark, I don't know who the hell you are, but be careful. That scumsucker Mike has a secondary trigger circuit. She interrupts me, my name is Inga, I am a friend of Masha, and do not worry. I have already found the second and third trigger circuits and disabled them. All that is left is the primary trigger circuit. I swore, hellsbells, a third trigger circuit, I totally missed that. Masha scolds me. Jack, I asked you not to do anything crazy, and you didn't listen to me, and almost died. Will you promise me to listen to me the next time? I cross my fingers and answer, of course my love. Then Inga spoils my plans when she announces, Masha, Jack had his fingers crossed during his answer to you. Masha questions, what does that mean? Inga explains to her, Masha, Americans cross their fingers when they tell a lie to ward off evil spirits. Masha starts to berate me when, thank God, a familiar voice intervenes. Present, Byron, at the half-destroyed porta-potty. I make it to the porta-potty disaster site. See Jack is awake and tease. Hey, you crusty old fart. What are you doing? Lying down on the job? Jack laughs at my insult, begins to cough, and Inga complains, Jack, I told you to remain motionless. Jack insults both of us. Hell, how many women do I have telling me what I can and cannot do, and Byron, you're older than dirt, so I don't know what the hell you're doing calling me a crusty old fart. Inga looks up at me, shakes her head, and I wonder what the hell is going on. The medic announces, well, I need to transport this man to the hospital. I hear a familiar sound, look to the sky and answer, no you don't. The hospital is coming here to us. Jack questions, don't tell me. Are we finally getting a medical plane back here? Inga gives me a bad look, but I hide my emotions as I answer. That's right. It's setting up for a landing as we speak. Then I address the medic. Do you need some help hauling his sorry old out of the porta-potty? Masha joyfully answers for Jack, and I understand the statement about women telling him what to do. Byron, your help would be greatly appreciated. Inga adds her comments. I have the primary trigger circuit stable, so now is a good time to move him. I look at a few of the Marines that are watching the spectacle and order. Once we get Jack out of the porta-potty, I need 2 of you to help take him to the medical plane. Inga shows the route by pointing with one hand. Byron, you can step here and there, but do not step any other places. I follow her instructions. Grab the lower half of the back, board the medic, put under Jack, as the medic says, on 3. 1, 2, 3. As we lift Jack, I complain. Damn, Masha must be feeding you too well. You've put on some weight. Jack counters, like hell I have. We get him free from the porta-potty. The 2 Marines come over and relieve us of the backboard, and Masha asks, Byron, aren't you coming to the medical plane? I look at Inga and answer, not right now. I need to do a couple of things first. Jack and Masha leave, and once they are out of earshot, I look at Inga, and she says, Present, Inga, problems with the porta-potty bomb. Once Jack and Masha are gone, Byron looks at me, and I say, Byron, I have a real problem here. Byron gives me a concerned look and questions, Inga, what's wrong? I very slowly shake my head and answer, I have tripped the primary trigger mechanism on this bomb, and the only thing keeping it from detonating is my hand, which is trapped between the triggering points. Byron looks around at the other Marines watching us and orders, we need everyone to move back a substantial distance while we continue to disarm this bomb. They move back and Byron questions, what can I do to help you? I reply, give me a few minutes to think about this problem. Present, Tom, at the porta-potty bomb. I finish setting up the damn trailers to my liking and decide to check on the old fart Jack. I head toward the screwed-up porta-potty, get close, and one of the Marines warns, I'm not sure what's going on, but we were told to stand back from the porta-potty. I observe and see Byron looks like a worried mother hen, pacing back and forth, so I decide I need to see what the hell is going on. I ignore the warning, walk up to Byron and ask, Byron, you look like you're going to have kittens. What the hell is wrong? I hear Inga's voice from the depths of the stinking rip to hell porta-potty announce, Tom, I am happy you are here. I have a problem and hope you can help me. I take one look at the shitty, stinking mess. Hope I don't have to get into it myself and ask, what do you need? Then I chuckle and tease a little. A huge bucket of wet wipes and some deodorant? Byron punches me in the shoulder and scolds me. Tom, stop goofing off. Inga's in serious trouble. She's activated the main trigger and is keeping the bomb from detonating with her hand. Inga adds, Byron is correct. I need something to put between the contacts, then I can slip my hand from between them. Do you have any idea as to what I could use? Shit, literally. I hate to do this, but I say, I need to come down and look at this problem. Inga commands and points with her free hand. Tom, you can step there and there, as those are the only spots which I know are safe. I carefully wade into the shitty porta potty and worry because this is going to ruin my cowboy boots. The smell is so bad my eyes begin to water and I question, how the hell do you see anything in here? Inga answers, I only breathe through my mouth, but even then it doesn't always work. My lack of accurate vision is why I accidentally triggered the primary circuit. I try breathing through my mouth. It helps some, but I can understand how she still had problems. I stop and ask Byron, do you have any gum, and can I borrow your shamak? Byron yells in reply and scares the hell out of me. Hell yes, I have both of those. I complain, will you please stop yelling? You scared the hell out of me. Now pass me a couple sticks of gum and your shamak. Byron complains, Tom, I don't think I should get in the porta potty with the two of you already being in it. You need someone to haul your butts out if it blows up. I shake my head and answer, Byron, it's not going to blow the hell up, or my name isn't Tom. But since you're being such a big baby, I'll come out and get the gum and shamak. I hike back out of the foul-fetid porta potty and walk up to him. He holds out the pack of gum, so I decide to take the whole damn pack and pop 2 sticks in my mouth. Then I take his shamak, wrap it around my face in hopes it will keep some of the smell from getting to my nose. I take a breath and complain, Byron, this smells almost as bad as the porta potty. When was the last time you washed it? Byron whines, well, if you don't want to use it, then you can use your own shamak. I inform Byron, I need yours because I'm giving mine to Inga, so shut your yap. I ask Inga for a reminder. Where is it that I can step? Inga points again with her free arm, and again I descend into the porta potty. The gum is helping, as is Byron's nasty shamak. I get close to Inga and say, I have some gum for you to chew that will help keep your eyes from watering. I take 2 sticks and Inga answers, Tom, please place them in my mouth because I don't want to move from my current position. I am going to complain, but I look into her eyes and for the first time ever I can see fear. So I unwrap 2 sticks of gum, place them in her mouth. She begins to chew them and I tell her, now I'm going to take my shamak and cover your nose and mouth. She shocks me when she offers, if Byron's shamak is so bad, I can use it. I answer, no, my amnesia has already kicked in. Then I move into position where I can see what Inga is doing with her other hand. Hell's bells. I see what she's doing, and I almost add to the shit in the porta potty. Now I understand why she's so damn scared. Inga asks, what is amnesia? I keep looking at the mess she's in, trying to figure out a way to keep the 3 of us from blowing ourselves to hell, and answer, amnesia is how your nose becomes used to a smell after smelling it for a long period of time. Even as screwed as we are, she still manages a giggle and says, I like that. It is sort of like amnesia of the nose. I continue contemplating what the hell we should do and absently reply, yeah, I guess so. I keep thinking of the problem as she says something else which I ignore and again answer, yeah, I guess so. Byron begins to laugh and Inga begins to giggle and says, Tom, you didn't hear what I just said. Byron adds his 2 cents. That's right, Tom. Inga said that if you saved her from this mess, she would sleep with you. I sputter, like hell. Inga, I might have figured out a way out of this mess, but only if you promise me you won't sleep with me. Even in the midst of the mess, Inga gives me pouty eyes and answers, okay, Tom, have it your way. Now what are you going to do? Present, Jens, Liz, Bernie, Ivan, and Samantha, at the cabin. The Tsif's medical plane lands, and Liz says, Jens, it's time for you to be checked by a real doctor who doesn't have suspect motives. The last thing I want is to spend more time on my back, because I have more important things to do. As my best alternative, I complain. Like hell, I need to go to the medical plane. Ivan yells a complaint and scares me. Miss Donaldson lady used too many bad words. Liz looks at me and says, Jens, Masha is heading to the medical plane with Jack. Why don't we take you there? Let the doctors check you over, and if they give you a clean bill of health, then you can do whatever you want to do. I look at everyone in order. What I would really like is if someone got a team together to go after Ben. I am pissed as hell when Samantha answers, don't worry, Jennifer. Stacy just left to find Ben. I'm sure when she finds him, she will notify us. I rise up off the gurney and yell, the last thing I want is for her to find Ben before we do. Stacy fooled me once about Ben, and I'm sure as hell not going to let her fool me again. Liz, with Jack out of the equation, can't you get a team together to look for Ben? Liz looks at me and says, Yince, it's more important for me to get you to the medical plane to be checked. Bernie, honey, would you mind taking care of this? Bernie gives us a shocked look, and then we finally get some help from someone else. I hear a chorus of voices. We are here and would love to get a team together to capture Ben. I question, Maria, Linus, where have you two been? Maria laughs and answers, Yince, if I told you I would have to kill you. We stopped by the medical plane on the way over here, and Jack is really messed up. But don't worry, we're here now, and I'm going to take you to the medical plane while Linus gathers a crew to go after Ben. I don't like this all and complain, I don't get a saying in this. Maria laughs and agrees, that's right, you don't. I don't like being ordered about by my girl Friday one bit, because I want to get up, find Ben and kick his butt. Present, Mira, heading to the cabin. I silently swear at myself for not accommodating Alexi's suggestion to play that disreputable game titled Auto Grand Theft. Had I gathered more experience, possibly I would not be experiencing the problems I currently am having operating this confounded four-wheeled motor vehicle. Oh Hades Carolines. My lack of operator skill has attracted the attention of the constabulary. Present, Todd, Ira, and Alexi, heading to the cabin. I feel that Alexi plays too much Grand Theft Auto. He spent much of his time in the room while we were at the Broadmoor playing the game, and lost some contact with reality. He was in favor of borrowing a car to take the three of us to the cabin when I sign and interject a problem with his approach. Alexi, while you and your sisters have diplomatic passports, I am not that fortunate. If we borrow a vehicle as you desire and are stopped by the police, you and Ira will be released, but I will be taken to jail. Ira comes to my defense. Alexi, Todd is accurate in his analysis of the situation. We cannot borrow a vehicle. Alexi complains, well, if we cannot borrow a vehicle, how are we supposed to transverse to the cabin? I smile at both of them and sign. We rent a vehicle using my credit card. The next questions surprise me. Present, Zarika and Yasmin, in juvenile detention. Another day just like the last, except this time, Ms. Hornahog doesn't come in to see me even though I was looking forward to talking with her since I had a new plan. I wonder what Zarika is doing. I also wonder if Ms. Hornhead went to see her today because she didn't bother to see me. Flashback, Ben, leaving Moscow. I finished changing into my BDUs after the drunken chick damn near ran me down. When I looked at the wooden crate in the back of the, I knew what I needed to do. I closed up the back of the, climbed back into the driver's seat and began to drive again, making sure to scan the road for any interesting-looking side roads where I could exit. I saw an old weathered sign announcing the next side road lead to a quarry. This would be the perfect place for my needs. I took the exit for the quarry, put the in four-wheel drive, memorized the reading on the odometer, and continued down the road. After about 5 clicks, I reached the quarry, which was surrounded by what looked to be a 10-foot chain-link fence with barbed wire on the top. There was a gate which was locked with a chain and padlock. The place looked like it hadn't been used for years, and now the condition of the sign made sense. I stopped beside a small guard shack, hopped out of the driver's seat, walked up to the shack, and verified it was empty with a window broken out of the door, and the door was unlocked. I opened the door, recoiled at the smell of alcohol, and something I couldn't quite place. Then I realized it was the nasty smell of old rancid sex from the many condoms which littered a corner of the shack. I guess someone, possibly teenagers, used this as a place to hook up. I felt damn sorry for the girl who needed to come to such a nasty place to have sex. I held my breath, went in and searched for a key for the gate in a key box on the wall. Unfortunately, it was empty. This was no problem because they had a winch on the front. I climbed back into the driver's seat, pulled the front of the about 10 feet away from the side of the gate, jumped out, spooled some cable off the winch, and hooked it up to the side of the gate away from the opening. I made sure the winch's brake was set, climbed back into the, and slowly backed up. It didn't take much force at all, and the hinges of the gate snapped right off. I loved it when a plan worked. I chose that side of the gate because the hinges looked old and would snap easier than the chain and padlock. I backed around and pulled the side of the gate toward the middle until there was enough room for me to pass. I disconnected the, drove inside to the edge of the quarry, and knew it would be perfect for what I needed. My stomach growled and reminded me I hadn't eaten anything since the meal Tatiana lied to me about making. Yeah, I was still sore about the lie, but I figured things pretty much evened out since she was most likely royally pissed about me taking off. And it wasn't like I didn't lie to her and almost everyone else about the function of my legs. I went to the back of the, opened up the food container, and was surprised as hell. Yuri had filled it to the brim with 24-hour officer rations. These were great and much better than our MREs because they contained real food in real cans. I grabbed one off the top, took out my knife, slit open the camo mylar bag, and pulled out the box that was inside. I flipped over the bag to read that it contained the following items. Survival matches, 6. Dried salted fish jerky. Nasty as hell unless you were Russian and happened to have been raised on the stuff. Drink mixes, 3. Melted cheese, Soft cheese, sort of like Velveeta, but more buttery. Army crackers, 6 packages. Meat pate, tastes like smashed up Vienna sausages. American chocolate, instant coffee, sugar, 2 packs. Instant cream, mixed vegetables, nasty gelled pork, puree of plums, nice gum. Apple sauce, tea, wet wipes, 4, beef stew, goulash with potatoes, chicken and rice, and finally a hexamine stove. It might seem like too much food, but it was your food for the whole day. However, it was just over 4,000 calories, and since I wasn't going to be fighting, I wouldn't need nearly that much. As I tried to decide what to eat for breakfast, I looked through the back of and I just might forgive Yuri for the prank he pulled on me. There was a box-marked stove which I opened, and inside I found a Russian clone of the Optimus 8, our stove, which was much better and faster than the damn hexamine tablet stove, which came with the officer rations. I decided to have the chicken and rice for breakfast along with some of the melted cheese and crackers. I peeled back the cover over the chicken and rice, fired up the stove, and put it on to heat. While it was heating, I opened up the melted cheese and 1 pack of crackers and began to eat them while I put some water in my canteen cup for some drink mix. I wanted some coffee, but I was tired as hell and needed to catch a few winks, so I decided to leave it for when I woke up. My meal was just getting warm enough to eat. The smell wafted through the air and made my stomach growl when I had a surprise visitor. Flashback, Jack and Masha, in Moscow. Tatiana had Ben's entire chart doctored other than getting the fake medical appointments entered into the hospital computer system when she hit the proverbial stone wall. I figured I would use some of the money Ben left for Masha to buy her car back to bribe the man who ran the records department in the hospital. We went into his office. He closed the door, sat down, and Masha questioned, "Do you speak English because my fiancé does not speak much Russian?" He looked at me and answered, "Yes, I do have some English. Now how might I give you service?" Masha explained, "We would like for you to create several appointments in the computer system which correspond with doctor reports which are in his chart." I sure as hell didn't like the way he glared at Masha and then rudely answered, "Are these the same falsified records which that nurse asked me to enter into the computer?" Masha replied, "If you are talking about Tatiana, then yes, it is the same records she asked you to enter into the computer." He stood up and ordered that I refused to perform. "Now leave my office." I gave him one of my best grins and asked, "Not even for $500? He turned his attention to me, glared at me, and commanded, "Both of you leave my office immediately." I was just getting ready to beat his fat pompous, but when the door opened and Yuri walked in, he looked at Masha, me, and the shithead that was standing behind his desk, and asked, "Jack, Tatiana told me you were having some problems. Is this true?" I motioned with my thumb toward the shithead and answered, "Yeah, Yuri, this prick won't help us fix Ben's records, and the major should be here soon." Yuri opened the door, barked some orders in Russian, and the whole damn office filled with the remainder of our Spetsnaz team. Yuri glared at the shithead and started to bark at him in Russian. The shithead looked shocked. He nodded his head and uttered many S, which I did understand. Yuri relaxed, looked at me, and said, "Jack, the problem has been resolved. We came to take you and your lovely fiancée out for breakfast." I thought for a moment and said, "Sorry, Yuri. We already had breakfast, and I'm not going to eat more." Yuri gave me a disbelieving look and questioned, "Jack, I have never known you to turn down a good meal." I shook my head and confessed, "Yuri, Masha has fed me so well I've put on weight and could barely fit into my service uniform. If I have any hope of fitting into my dress blues for the wedding, I have to start losing weight right now." Yuri laughed and promised, "Jack, do not worry about losing weight because Ben is missing and you will be taking his place on our team. Your time of vacation is over, so now you will train with us daily." I started to complain, but Yuri's cell phone rang. He looked at it and said, "Excuse me, I need to take this in private. Please follow your team members to the waiting truck." I complained, "Yuri, I'm in my service uniform because I'm meeting the major." Yuri laughed and answered, "We have BDUs for you, and would you rather meet the major or train with us?" Masha added, "Jack, do not worry about meeting the major. We will have the doctors meet him and explain things when he arrives." I laughed and answered Yuri, "Hell, if this is taken care of, then I'd much rather be with you guys than meet the major." I started to stand. Masha nudged me in the side and whispered in my ear, "Jack, find out what Yuri knows about Ben leaving." I kissed her and whispered in reply, "Don't worry, I will find out all he knows, but what did he say to the shithead to change his mind?" Masha laughed and answered, "Jackie told him the whole Spetsnaz team would take turns beating him until he agreed to fix the computer records. Now get going, my fiancé, and don't get too hurt or too tired." I walked out of the office and wondered what the hell Mash meant by her last words. Hell, I had trained with these guys before, and it wasn't that bad. Flashback, Tatiana, in Moscow. Masha walked up to me, smiled, and said, Tatiana, the problem with Ben's computer records is taken care of. Now all we need is for the doctors to talk to the major when he arrives at the hospital. The scumsucker had given me such a bad time about it. He even threatened to call the nursing supervisor. I was shocked that Masha was able to fix it, so I inquired, Masha, you must be a miracle worker. How did you get him to change his mind? Masha grinned and answered, I didn't do anything. He was giving Jack and me a terrible time. Then Yuri came into his office with the whole Spetsnaz team and threatened him. After that, he was more than happy to fix the records. I laughed and shared some important background information. Yuri had come into Ben's room while I was cleaning up and asked where Ben was. I told him Ben had left to deal with the Chechens, and he genuinely looked surprised. I also mentioned your plan to keep Ben out of trouble and the difficulties I had with that stubborn bureaucrat in the records office. Yuri left quickly, so I assumed he went straight to find you. What exactly did Yuri threaten the bureaucrat with? Masha surprised me with her response. I didn't want to tell Jack the full truth, so I told him they threatened to take turns beating the guy up. In reality, they said they would make his life unbearable until he agreed to fix the records. After that, he was more than willing to cooperate. I laughed and said, I am surprised he didn't make a mess in his pants. By the way, where is Jack? Masha smiled and answered, he is taking Ben's place on the Spetsnaz team and will be training each day with them from now on. I think it is good he will not be here when the major arrives. I frowned at Masha and told her, Masha, you do not understand. It is not a good thing that Jack is taking Ben's place. Masha looked confused and questioned, Tatiana, Jack has trained with the Spetsnaz before, so I do not see any problems. I frowned and informed Masha, Ben told me that Yuri and the team took it easy on Jack because of his threats, but they were terrible with Ben's training. They made Ben do twice the work because they wanted to see if they could break the American. Masha looked at me and said, Jack is not a feeble old man. I am sure he will rise to the occasion. Now I need to go and wait for the major's arrival. I did not have the heart to relay to Masha some of the things Ben told me they made him do because their actions bordered on torture. Flashback, Major M, at the Moscow hospital. I finally, after spending hours in the Moscow traffic jam, arrived at the hospital. I walked in, expected to see Sergeant Reynolds, but instead saw his bitch fiancée. I was still pissed at her for what happened last time I was in Moscow and wanted to rip her a new a-hole, but remembered how the old man wanted her and Jack to have a hell of a wedding. So I walked up to her and said, Hello, Maria. I knew better than to use her diminutive name unless she said it was allowed. I expected Jack to either meet me at the airport or at least be here to report to me when I arrived. The bitch smiled at me and answered, Jack asked me to send you his apologies. With Ben being gone, he is training full-time with the Spetsnaz team. I was taken aback by what she said and I questioned, what do you mean with Ben being gone? I thought he couldn't walk. The bitch gave me that damn smile of hers that was too practiced and replied, I am sorry. I am not qualified to describe the situation. The doctors will be here soon and they will explain. Something was rotten as hell in Denmark, so I asked, well, do you at least know which room he is in? The bitch continued with a smile and answered, he was in room 302 until last night. Now we don't know where he is. I ordered before I left, tell Sergeant Reynolds I need to see him tonight after his training time with the Spetsnaz team is over. She shrugged her shoulders and answered, I will relay your order if I see him. I hauled my butt and my bags to the elevator, waited for it to open, stepped in and pressed the button for the third floor. I was sure something was going on and I was going to get to the bottom of it. The elevator opened, then I hauled my butt and my bags into room 302. On arrival, I found Sergeant Blaine's girlfriend nurse. Damn, she was one hot bitch, crying and cleaning up the room. She looked at me and I asked, where's Sergeant Blaine? She cried even more and yelled, he is gone and it is entirely your fault. I sure as hell didn't like the sound of this, so I rebuffed her. How the hell could it be my fault? I just arrived today. She cried more and began incoherently babbling in Russian. A doctor walked into the room and asked, are you Sergeant Blaine's American major? I nodded and answered, yes, I am. Now what the hell is going on? Where the hell is Sergeant Blaine? Sergeant Blaine's bitch nurse wailed like a banshee and the doctor suggested, we should continue this in my office so as not to continue to traumatize Sergeant Blaine's private nurse. He opened the door, then I hauled my butt and my bags down the hallway and into his office. He motioned to a chair and suggested, please take a seat. I was at the end of my patience, so I sat down and threatened, if I do not find out where Sergeant Blaine is immediately, I will call the embassy and you will have to deal with the ambassador. The doctor folded his hands and shocked me when he replied, Major, that is an excellent idea. We do not know how, but Sergeant Blaine left the hospital last night and no one knows his current location. However, we do know it was prompted by the feeling of imminent dread he had concerning your return to Moscow. I was ready to beat the shit out of this doctor, but I needed more information, so I restrained myself and questioned. Doctor, I have no idea what in the hell you were talking about. The doctor opened a chart. I assumed it was Sergeant Blaine's, and answered, Sergeant Blaine was suffering severe psychological issues initiated by your actions toward him during your original time as his commanding officer in Moscow. His whole psyche was centered on your imminent return to Russia and filled him with depression and despair. Unfortunately, last night Sergeant Blaine succumbed to those feelings and somehow departed the hospital. Now that you are here, it would be beneficial to discuss with you what you did to precipitate the intense psychological trauma that Sergeant Blaine experienced. I sure as hell didn't like the sound of this, so I asked, what sort of doctor are you? He smiled at me and replied, I am Sergeant Blaine's psychologist. Why do you ask? I was dumbstruck and sat back in my chair. If they were able to pin Sergeant Blaine's leaving on me coming back to Moscow, well, let's just say I saw the rest of my life in the Corps being spent living in Thule below the bony bitch's top bunk. I needed to get to my hotel and start working on damage control. Flashback, Jennifer, at the military hospital. Because my female dog nurse Katie had us over a barrel, I had consented to let the JA drop the charges against Ro Frickin' Bear and to even dance Swan Lake with him. However, Daddy and the JA had a plan just in case he tried something during the bicycle lift. So we thought we had everything worked out with my female dog nurse Katie until she walked into the room, smiled, and said, oh, I forgot. There's one more thing. I felt like I had already given way too much, so I blurted out, what in heck are you talking about? You already gave us your demands, and now you're changing them. You can go. Daddy interrupted me before I said something really bad and asked, Katie, sorry for Jennifer's outburst since she's pretty excitable right now, but she is correct. I thought you had already given us your terms. Katie smiled and answered, I had forgotten about the deal you and I had made earlier about Jennifer coming and living with me for a few months. I still expect you to honor that deal. I watched Daddy as his face began to turn red, and I knew it was my turn to interrupt because I had already come up with a plan for this contingency. I smiled at my female dog nurse because I knew she was going to deeply regret this and answered, Daddy, don't worry because this will be no big deal. However, I don't want the term to only be for 2 months. Daddy's mouth dropped open as he looked at me and questioned, Jennifer, are you sure? I hugged Daddy and whispered into his ear, don't worry, Daddy. She is going to regret every day that I am at her apartment. He pulled away from me, winked at me, looked at Katie, and said, you've got a deal. Now how about dropping the charges against Evelyn? The female dog Katie smiled at us and answered, normally, I would keep the paperwork with the charges until after all of our agreement was finished. However, I know you are all trustworthy, so here is my copy of the charges against Evelyn. Jay, please destroy this copy and your copy too. Now I'm tired and I'm heading home for tonight. I do expect Robert to be here tomorrow so that we can start working on Swan Lake. As she left the room, the Jay questioned, Sir, I can't believe you agreed to her taking Jennifer for 2 months. I interrupted, Daddy didn't agree to it. I agreed to it, and she is going to hate every day while I am with her. Daddy laughed and added, don't worry about it. Jennifer can be a RPITA when she wants to be. I stamped my foot and complained, Daddy, I am not a RPITA. Daddy laughed and said, see what I mean. Now, Jennifer, we need to go and have a conversation with the pervert and his family before he comes here tomorrow. We need to make sure he doesn't try anything nasty with you. I had one more idea, so I motioned to Daddy. He came in close. I told Daddy what I wanted him to bring to the hospital tomorrow. He pulled away, laughed, and answered, Jennifer, I never dreamed of ever buying one of those for you, but I think it's a great idea. Now get some sleep because we will be here bright and early in the morning. Flashback, Alexei at home. The chewing of the cryptex ruse had become old and my father had already grown tired of watching it. Besides, chewing on it bothered my teeth. I tried to remember what my friends' dogs did which annoyed their masters and remembered one action that would surely garner the attention of both of my parents. I took the cryptex to the edge of the area rug of the living room, pulled the edge of the rug up with my teeth, and pushed the cryptex under the rug. Yes, my new plan was to bury things around the house. Next, I ran into the kitchen, opened the refrigerator, pulled out some bones my mother had for soup, and strategically buried them around the house. Then luck beamed on me. I saw Chow Mein leave my parents' room and move toward her nasty and smelly litter box. I waited until she was in the litter box. Then I charged her, barking like crazy. She looked at me like I was crazy until I became very close to her. Then she yowled like a banshee, jumped out of the litter box before she was totally done, tipped the litter box over, and made a huge mess. But best of all, she had a piece of poop still coming out of her rear as she ran into my parents' room. I went back to the living room, lay on the floor, scratched at myself, and waited until I heard a huge yell from my parents' room. I fought back laughter because I knew they discovered the gift Chow Mein brought them. Chow Mein ran out of my parents' room again, I saw her and chased her while barking the entire time. Chow Mein ran for concealment under the television stand. I leaned down, continued to bark at her while she hissed evilly and tried to scratch me. I am sure that father heard all the noise in our normally quiet house, because he came out of their room and yelled at me, "Alexei, stop bothering Chow Mein." I whimpered and moved back to the living room floor like a scolded dog. I couldn't wait for him to discover my new ruse. Flashback, Mira and Ira, in Israel. Hades Carolines. The agony inflicted upon my posterior was greater than expected. I looked at Dr. Watson, who shared in the agony, and questioned, "Dr. Watson, what do you feel precipitated our primary Baker Street irregular to assault us with the BB gun of retribution?" Dr. Watson looked at me and stated, "Sherlock, I believe she has once again become psychologically dysfunctional." I countered, "Dr. Watson, being a medical man, you surely must know that with her current treatment regime, that is unlikely." Dr. Watson responded, "Sherlock, I am not certain about the accuracy of your assertion." Once again, Dr. Watson questioned my logical conclusions. I prepared for imminent battle with Dr. Watson when Akam the Obese interrupted. "I know why Safia shot both of you." We turned our attention to Akam the Obese, who was still being protected by the other Baker Street irregulars, and I ordered, "Akam the Obese, please render unto us your opinion on this puzzling conundrum." Akam the Obese challenged, "First, I want your promise that you will not shoot me with that damn BB gun again." I looked to Dr. Watson for counsel. She raised both her glenohumeral joints in a manner that suggested she didn't care to express an opinion, so I proceeded, "We promise you will not suffer the BB gun of retribution for resolving this conundrum." Akam the Obese looked relieved and stated, "Safia shot both of you because we are all tired of all of this Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson bullshit. It is frustrating to an infinite degree. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson are fictional characters, and in your attempts to bring them to life, you have held this household hostage under bizarre circumstances." I looked at Ira, Dr. Watson, and questioned. Flashback, Todd, on the island. The next morning when I awoke, Lou was gone and Lynn was pressed tightly against me. She realized I was awake and asked, "Do you normally awaken in such a state?" She was referring to my morning wood, but I had no way to answer her. She turned toward me, and I discovered there were some things I didn't have to verbalize. Once we finished, I made some motions, and Lynn finally figured out what I asked and answered. "Lou has left to go hunting for today and wants us to practice ASL and JSL. Now that I've taken care of your morning problem, let's get to work so we can surprise her with our progress when she comes back to camp." Before we started to work, I needed to make sure that both women were happy about what happened, so I made some gestures which Lynn finally figured out and answered, "Do not worry. You fell asleep early last night, and Lou and I worked out all the details. I had learned a few things, so I was able to sign." "What details?" She laughed. "You are an attractive man, and we have decided that we will share you between us." I was shocked that they both had such liberal attitudes towards sex and wanted to ask more, but I didn't have the faculties to ask. Lynn began my lesson, which lasted until Lou came back, and then, present, Ben, through Leadville on Highway 24. I changed direction once again, turn from the north to the west, and head toward Highway 24, which will take me through Leadville. I'm glad I left the feeling of being watched behind me. However, it doesn't last long, because once I hit Highway 24 and enter Leadville, everyone is pointing and looking at me because I'm still wearing the chemical hazard suit. I know what I look like. I look like Dustin Hoffman when he was in the Outbreak movie, less the face mask. I hope I scare the shit out the whole town because they were all scum-suckers to me when I was growing up. I get a morose pleasure by running past my old nemesis, Beverly. You remember all the shit she gave me? And yelling, "Run for your lives." It's a huge infection. She gives me a funny look and then begins to run. It's all I can do to keep from laughing my butt off. Leadville has grown, but that doesn't interest me anymore. That part of my life, like the cabin and Yentz, are behind me. I stay on Highway 24, make it through the town to the intersection of Highway 24 and 91. I veer left, staying on Highway 24, and start the 8-mile climb to the top of Tennessee Pass. I'm running well, mostly because of the week or so I spent at the cabin being chased all over hell by the greenies. They helped me acclimatize to the altitude again. As I run, I remember a time running in Leadville that was much more enjoyable. Present, Yentz, Maria, Liz, Ivan, and Samantha at the cabin. The last thing I want to do is spend more time on my back. I want to get the hell up and join the team Linus is putting together to go find Ben. So I continue to complain about having to go to the medical plane. "Listen, I'm fine and I don't need to go to the medical plane." Maria smiles at me and bargains. "Okay, Yentz, I tell you what. Let me examine you, and if I like what I see, then we won't take you to the medical plane." Then Maria orders, "I need to take a look at my princess boss's chest wound, but I sure as hell can't do it while all these Marines are standing around and gawking at us." So I order, Okay, all you Marines standing around. Either find something else to do like start getting your bunks ready in the trailers or face away from Jennifer. I need to uncover her some to inspect her wounds. They take the hint and mutter some unintelligible complaints as they leave toward the trailers. I take the dressing off my princess boss's chest wound, and what the hell? There's a big incision instead of the very small surgical incision I made. And I can't really think of any medical reason for them to enlarge the incision. I begin to feel around on the incision. What the hell is that under her skin? It must tickle her because my princess boss begins to laugh. Then the next thing I know, she takes a deep breath. Her eyes roll back and she passes out. I freak out and think it's something I've done from palpating the thing in her and yell, "We need to get her to the medical plane immediately. She's passed out." Liz tries to calm and correct me with what I am sure is more of the same bullshit. I recognize what is going on with Jens. Ben has connected to her again. Maria doesn't believe the two of them can connect. Hell, I didn't at first until I researched it, but I am a firm believer now. Maria flies off the handle again, so I try to calm her. Maria, Jens didn't pass out. I recognize this as Ben being connected to her. Maria gives me the "I don't believe you" look. Then Ivan adds, "Yes, angry lady with dirty mouth who used many bad words." I can feel that Unca Ben and Donald Duxon lady are one in spirit. Maria glares at Ivan, then gives me a serious as hell look and says, "Liz, I don't care about the whole bullshit of Jens and Ben connecting. Something else is wrong." I reach down and put my hand over Ivan's mouth so he doesn't piss Maria off more with his complaining about her language and ask, "Maria, please explain what you're talking about?" Maria touches Jens' side and says, "Liz, look. This incision where I put her chest tube, it's much larger than the one I put in her chest, but that's not the half of it. When I palpate the incision, I feel something under her skin." It is my turn to doubt Maria, so I challenge her, but catch my language before I offend Ivan. "Maria, what in the heck do you mean?" Maria glares at me and rises to my challenge. "Listen, if you don't believe me, you touch here and tell me what you feel." Even though it's sort of gross, I touch the incision. Then I quickly pull my hand back and ask, "Maria, what is that?" Maria shakes her head and answers, "I have no idea. It's not part of any medical device I know of that's used to treat a collapsed lung, and I sure as hell don't like it. We need to get her to the medical plane so the doctors can examine her." Once again, I cover Ivan's mouth so he doesn't complain and piss of Maria. I put Ivan down and help Maria push the gurney toward the medical plane, and Ivan asks, "I know Mama and Papa in Big Ugly Plane. If I good and nice boy, could I see Mama and Papa?" I look at Samantha and ask, "Sam, can you help us out by taking Ivan to the medical plane to see his mother and father?" Sam smiles at me. I'm not sure what it means after all the fights we've recently had, and agrees, "Sure, Liz, I would love to." She and Ivan head toward the medical plane, while Maria and I begin to push the gurney toward the same plane. This is so nice being connected to Ben again. He's remembering when we won the Leadville 100. Wait, it's more than that. He's running in Leadville right now. I need to wake up and tell Linus. But it's so nice we're connected again, so I think I can let it wait a little while. Oh shit, he's gone again. Present, Ben, through Leadville on Highway 24. Son of a bitch, I forgot about that problem. I begin thinking about when Jens and I won the Leadville 100, and the next thing I know we connect again. At least this time, she isn't high as a kite. It was nice again being able to connect with her. I really miss the closeness we had at one time, but it just furthers my resolve to someday make Hussein pay for it. I'm partway up the pass when a truck passes me, then stops, and I see an old friend step out of the driver's side. He smiles, waves, and waits for me. I get closer, and he yells, "Shit, Ben, you're a sight for sore eyes. What the hell are you doing running in that contraption? You scared the shit out of the whole damn town so badly they flooded the sheriff's office with calls." I reach his truck and answer, "Hell, Jim, long time no see. I thought you left this no-horse town for the big lights and loud bars of Denver. And how in the hell did you know about all the calls to the sheriff's department?" In reply, Jim, my best and only friend from high school, opens his coat. I see the star, and he laughs and answers, "Probably because I took most of the calls myself, seeing as I am now the sheriff. Shit, Ben, I got tired of the plastic life in the plastic city, trying to keep up with the plastic Joneses, and decided to come back home and raise my family." I shake his hand and ask, "Family, how many you got?" Jim answers, "I guess you didn't know because you took off right after graduation, but Lori and I had to get married right after I graduated. She had a set of twin boys, and then a couple years later another set of twins, girls this time. Lori was a sophomore that Jim had been banging the hell out of when we were seniors." I do some quick math in my head, whistle, and say, "Damn, that meant she had 4 kids right around the time she was 20. Sorry about causing a scare in your town. Am I in any trouble for it?" Jim motions to the passenger side of his truck, laughs, and says, "Yeah, Lori and I had a rough go of it, and I thought we were going to get divorced, but we held it together for the kids. Life was a real bitch until we came back here, and since then it couldn't be better. Shit. You should consider moving back to your old man's cabin because it's a hell of a lot different here than when we were in high school. And hell no, you're not in trouble. Climb in, and I will take you where you're going. I take my pack off, put it in the back of the truck, climb in the passenger seat, and Jim asks, "Where you headed?" I tell him, "Top of Tennessee Pass to the parking lot across from Ski Cooper." He nods his head and asks, "You headed over to the Continental Divide Trail?" I affirm, "That's right. I always wanted to hike it, and the time finally feels right." Jim questions, "What does your wife have to say about this?" I sadly answer, "Jim, I never got married. There was this one woman who was perfect for me, but things never worked out." He shakes his head and replies, "Sorry to hear that. I do know from reading the news you had some rough times of your own." I laugh and answer, "Yeah, but not as bad as some of the times we had together in high school." Jim laughs with me and asks, "Remember the time you made the thermite?" I smile and think back to that time. I'm snapped out of my daydream when Jim stops the truck and says, "We're here. That's an interesting looking rifle I saw in your pack. Do you mind if I ask you about it?" Should I guess Jim is more of a sheriff than I thought he would be. I certainly don't want to talk to him about the rifle because it's not totally legal, so I reply, "Jim, I would rather you didn't ask me about it." I'm shocked when he smiles and says, "Present, Jens, Maria, and Liz, at the cabin." I wake up from my connection with Ben, look at Maria, and command, "Listen, I know where Ben is, so I'm getting up, and there's nothing you can do about it." Maria holds me down and counters, "Jens, listen to me. They put something inside you while you were in the Special Forces CSH. The medical plane is here, so we need to have them look at you and figure out what the hell it is." I look around then ask, "From the way you're talking, Ivan must not be here. And what the hell are you talking about?" Liz answers my question, "Jens, I had Samantha take him to the medical plane to see his parents, and Maria is right. Touch your side." I begin to feel my side and answer, "I don't feel a thing now, let me up, because Ben is in Leadville right on Highway 24. Maria moves my hand to the incision on my side and corrects my faulty impression, "Jens, feel again, and tell me what you feel." I begin to feel around, and son of a bitch, they are right. I feel something like a long cylinder with rounded ends and begin to bitch. "What the hell is this, and what did they do to me?" Maria answers, "Jens, I have no idea what it is. It could be some sort of tracking device, or..." She stops talking. I look at her and question, "Or what?" Maria gulps, and I see fear on her face as she says, "Jens, for all we know, that crippled scumsucker might have put a bomb in you." I realize now how serious this is, and answer, "Okay, get me to the medical plane as quickly as possible, but tell Linus to get the team over to Leadville as soon as possible to get hot on the trail before Ben leaves." I know Mike is a ruthless scumsucker, but could he really have put a bomb inside me? And if he did, how could the doctors defuse it? I come up with an idea and ask Maria, "Present, Destiny, searching for Ben." Good. My plan on avoiding Ben sensing that I am watching him is working. I make sure to not directly look at him, but instead I look past him. However, I do have a problem when he enters the little town of Leadville, since I can sense there are many hunters here who, unlike Ben, would gladly shoot me. Since Ben so nicely told me that he's going to hike the Continental Divide Trail, I take a chance and assume that's what he's going to do. I skirt the town, leaving a wide berth, find the Continental Divide Trail, run up it about 10 miles, crawl under a pine tree, and take a much-needed nap. Present, Stacy, going after Ben. This satellite GPS unit that's tracking Ben and his friend is really cool and is working great. I guess it figures out the individual's heat signature, differentiates it from other heat signatures, and highlights the people you are tracking. It highlights Ben in red and his friend in yellow. Yes, this is much better than that stupid drone that chased us the first night we tried to sleep. I watch as Ben goes right through Leadville and his friend bypasses the town. Then a short distance outside of town, it looks like Ben meets someone in a truck and disappears into the truck. I mess around with the piece of shit GPS unit, but can't get it to locate Ben again. So I decide to scan for his friend, and I'm shocked at how much ground she has covered in a very short time. Hell, she must be on a horse or motorcycle. She finally stops about 10 miles up the Continental Divide Trail. We've been taking a leisurely trotting pace through Leadville, but with losing Ben and his friend stopping, I nudge Patches with my heels into a canter and listen to her triple hoof falls. I can tell she doesn't like it, but screw her. I want to find Ben before he gets too far away. Present, Masha, at the medical plane with Jack. I was thankful that Inga is here to help with the undetonated bomb in the partially destroyed portable toilet. In my condition, I did not want to be exposed to the swill that was strewn all over creation from the portable toilet, and her skills are far superior to mine when it comes to bomb disposal. I watch as the doctors are working on my husband and begin to pray. Then Samantha brings Ivan into the medical plane. He looks at the doctors and astutely asks, "Bad man hurt Papa?" I pick him up and hug him and reply, "Yes, the bad man hurt Papa very much." Ivan says, I will ask Wolf that is also a lady to bite bad man very terrible and hard. I know I need to distract my son, so I say, Ivan, I think it would be better if we prayed for Papa. He thinks for a moment and answers, yes, prayer for Papa would be good. He looks at Samantha and asks, Miss Sam join us in prayer for Papa? She smiles at Ivan and surprises me when she says, of course, let's all pray for your father. Present, Byron, at the half-destroyed porta-potty. I can tell that both Tom and Inga are in trouble. I want to do something to help, so I ask, how about if I come down there and relieve Inga so you two can go figure out how to disable this bomb? Tom looks at Inga and Inga says, Byron, I'm not sure that would work. I ask, why the hell not? My hands are larger than yours, but smaller than Tom's. Inga looks around and answers, Byron, I'm not sure it's wise, however it would let me leave the bomb and create a device to permanently disarm it. I order Tom, get your butt out of there because I'm taking both of your places. He begins to move out of the porta-potty and teases, okay, it's your funeral. Once he's outside, I retrieve my shamak and gum, put a couple pieces of gum in my mouth, cover my face with the shamak, and climb into the porta-potty. I get close to Inga, lower my head, and she explains, you can see how my hand is trapped between the contacts. That is all that keeps the bomb from detonating. I look closer and comment, it looks more to me like it's your fingernail that's between the contacts. I think for a moment, come up with an idea and say, I've got an idea. Hey Tom, give me a sheet out of the notepad you always carry. Tom hands me a page out of his notepad, and of course accompanies it with a complaint. Byron, do you know what the hell you're doing? I smile as I take the page out of his hand and answer, Tom, I'm a little older than you and have a bit more experience with things like this. I fold the notepad paper in two, slowly and carefully slip it between the contacts and tell Inga, okay, slowly take your hand away. She takes her hand away, the contacts close on the paper, and nothing happens. I then order, okay Inga, get your butt out of here and figure out some way to make this permanent. I will stay here and make sure the paper doesn't slip out. Inga craws over me, which I have to say is an enjoyable feeling, and wonder why the hell Tom has so much trouble liking her. Hell, the old fart is lucky she cares for him. If I had a young thing like Inga interested in me, I would retire to someplace warm, possibly the Caribbean on a sailboat, and live out the rest of my life in blissful debauchery. I continue to keep an eye on the piece of notepad paper and then notice something I sure as hell don't like. Present, Inga and Tom, making a solution to the porta-potty bomb. I climb over Byron to extricate myself from the portable toilet. I notice that Byron gets a little excited by it, but determine he's old and the excitement will do him some good. Once I'm outside, I remove Tom's shamak and say, thank you for letting me borrow this. He doesn't take it and offers, since you're going to be going back in there as soon as we come up with something to permanently disarm the bomb, why don't you keep it? Now what are you planning on using to permanently disarm the bomb? I look at Tom and reply, I was thinking of coming up with a piece of non-conductive plastic that is also thick enough to prevent the contacts from closing. However, the fire in the cabin seems to have destroyed all the plastic in the area. Tom answers, I think that Inga's idea of using plastic is perfect, so I answer, that's a great idea. One of the trailers is a mobile kitchen, and I bet we can find a plastic bowl in there that will work perfectly. We are almost to the mobile kitchen trailer when the ground shakes. We look at each other, and Inga says, oh no, Byron. We turn around and run back toward the porta-potty, but present, Todd, Ira, and Alexei heading to the cabin. To try to avoid trouble with the law or possible jail by following Alexei's suggestion of borrowing a car, I sign a different solution. We rent a vehicle using my credit card. Alexei questions, what is this credit card to which you refer? I shake my head and sign. You have never seen a credit card? Ira also questions, neither of us have ever seen an item called a credit card. But if such a device will prevent you from having problems with the constabulary, then it would be wise to use it to purchase a vehicle. I cannot believe they have never seen a credit card, so I shake my head, open my wallet, pull out a credit card and sign. This card will allow us to rent a car like a person rents an apartment. We won't be purchasing the car, and we will have to return the car, in good condition, when we complete our trip to the cabin. Ira smiles at me and states, I would like to acquire such a magic card. I am quite certain it would be useful. Alexei, however, is skeptical and complains, I do not see the advantage of such a piece of plastic when I am perfectly capable of borrowing an automobile for our needs. Ira and Alexei begin to argue about the merits of credit cards, with neither of them really understanding the concept. The argument is quite comical, however I restrain my laughter because I do not want to physically fight with either of them. I do wonder why Alexei is making such a big deal over this, since he has previously shown himself to be thoughtful before taking action. We go to the concierge desk, I pull out my credit card and a notepad and write on it that I would like to rent a car. We start to fill out the paperwork and the concierge asks, would you like the additional damage insurance on the vehicle? I remember watching Alexei as he played Grand Theft Auto. I'm not sure that he won't be driving, so I nod in affirmation. Alexei and Ira are still arguing as the concierge says, "We will bring the car around to the front for you and load your luggage into the trunk." He begins to take Ira's luggage when Ira stops arguing with Alexei and challenges, "If you try to take back my clothes, I will kill you." It's comical as hell. She scared him so badly he stepped back, tripped over Alexei's luggage and fell on his butt, which of course pissed off Alexei. Damn, what was it with these two and their obsession over the clothes? I knew I needed to intervene, or they just might kill the concierge. I walk over, help him to stand, and he apologizes. "Sorry, Ms. I was just going to put your suitcases into the trunk of your rental car." I quickly sign to Ira and Alexei. "You two need to relax. He's telling the truth." Ira glares at him and says, "You may not handle my luggage. I am not a feeble woman and am perfectly capable of locomotivating it myself." Alexei further confuses the poor concierge by adding, "That goes double for me, mister, and you better not have broken anything when you fell over my suitcase." That makes me wonder what Alexei has in his suitcase that is breakable. But with the mood the two of them were in now, I sure don't want to ask. To make my point, I motion to my bag. The concierge understands what I mean, collects my bag and mentions, "I will be right back with your car, sir." Both Ira and Alexei laugh, so I sign. "What the hell is so funny?" Alexei starts, "He called you sir." Ira finishes, "But we thought you worked for a living." I palm my forehead and can't believe I fell for one on the oldest sayings in the book, but it did improve Ira and Alexei's mood. The concierge arrives with the car, opens the trunk. I about bust a gut watching Ira and Alexei fight to see which one would be the first to get their suitcase in the trunk first. Alexei amazingly wins when he pulls Ira's hair. Ira throws her suitcase on the top of Alexei's, and again he complains, "Ira, if you break anything in my suitcase, I will make you pay for it." Ira sticks her tongue out at Alexei, laughs and challenges, "Alexei, the day has not arrived that you can force me to recompense you for anything." Alexei rubs his hands together and gives a perfect impression of a mad scientist cackle and replies, "Yes, my sister. However, I am keeping track of your insults, and when the day comes then you will suffer greatly." Before this gets totally out of hand, I sign, "Let's get in the car and see if we can find Mira." We get into the car. I take the driver's seat and Alexei complains, "Todd, I assumed I would drive." I was hoping he would say something like that, so I sign, "You know what they say about assuming. It makes a shit out of you and me." Ira begins to giggle, and Alexei complains, "Todd, I'm serious. I want to drive." Suddenly, I understand his desire to borrow a car for our trip. We are away from the hotel, but not far enough away yet, so I sign, "Alexei, I couldn't list you as a driver on the rental car agreement because you are too young. However, I will let you drive when we get far enough away from the hotel if you promise not to wreck the car." Ira states, "Alexei, Todd's compromise does not mean you can drive this vehicle as if you illegally borrowed it." Alexei pouts, "What fun is it to drive a car if I cannot drive it as if I stole it?" I begin to sign and Ira points and interrupts, "What in Hades is that?" I look and damn, she's right. What in the hell is going on? Present, Zarika and Yasmin, in juvenile detention. Once again, Ms. Hornahog does not bother to come and see me. It makes me wonder what she's doing, plus I am a little upset that I cannot try my new plan. But it is nice because she doesn't interrupt my physical training, and I hope that Yasmin is also training. Ms. Hornhead does not come to see me today, which is fine. I was able to find a piece of a pencil when I was out of solitary confinement, so I've been sleeping all day and drawing pictures on the wall. My favorite drawing was one of Ms. Hornhead that has devil horns, a barbed tail, and a pitchfork. Flashback, Ben, leaving Moscow. My meal began to bubble. I was almost ready to eat when I got a surprise visitor. A Russian gray wolf began to approach the back of where I set up the stove and started cooking my breakfast. I assumed she was attracted by the smell of my food cooking. I knew the food cooking had my attention because my stomach growled like crazy. The wolf sat down, about 15 meters from me, cocked her head, and gave me a comical as hell look. I could only assume she was confused by the noise my stomach was making. I looked at all the damn food in my ration for the day and knew that I wouldn't eat all of it, so I figured, what the hell. First, I opened the nasty salted dried fish sticks. I never could acquire a taste for them, not even after I had many beers, which the Russians ate like candy canes. I tossed one at her. She snapped it out of the air and swallowed it with one gulp. This was entertaining as hell, so I tossed more of them, this time making sure not to throw them right at her. She caught all of them like an expert. There weren't many of them, so it didn't last for long, and she still looked hungry. I looked at my rations and decided I didn't want the goulash with potatoes because potatoes weren't my favorite food unless they were French fries. I loosened one corner of the tin, tossed it to her, and she easily caught it. She demolished the damn tin as she got to the goulash. I was concerned she might eat the tin, but she finally spit it out, then nosed it around. I knew there was no way in hell I was going to eat the gloopy mess they called gelled pork, Hell, I even hated the koladets, Russian gelled meat made using gelatin. So again, I loosened the corner on it and tossed it to her. She caught it, and I was surprised as hell when she spit it out. I laughed like hell and said aloud, "I guess I'm not the only one that doesn't like gelled pork." She whined in response, and I continued laughing. My chicken and rice was ready, and I closed up the melted cheese because I planned to save the rest of it for later. And of course ran into the one big problem with the Russian officer rations. There were no good ways to close things up and save them for later. It wasn't bad living out of the back of my, but the rations had a bad tendency to open up or leak and make a hell of a mess in a pack. The only way to fix it was to eat all of whatever you opened. Hell, if they had included some plastic bags, it would have helped. I set it back in the tray with the rest of the food, put my canteen cup on the stove to heat the water for my drink mix, and began to eat my chicken and rice. It wasn't half bad, but it sure could have used a bit of wine and butter. Yuri knew I used those ingredients to make the meals better, so I would need to search the back of the later to see if he remembered to include those. The whole time the wolf continued to watch me. It was strange, like she was trying to tell me something. I was finished with my chicken and rice, tossed her the empty tin which she caught, then began to lick the hell out of it. I complained, "Well, if you don't want the gelled pork, you can't be that hungry." The water was boiling in my canteen cup. I added the drink mix to it, blew on it some to cool it down, and slowly drank it as I continued to watch the wolf. It was the closest I had ever been to a wolf because we didn't have them in the Rocky Mountains anymore. I took a couple steps toward her to see what she would do. She stood up and began to back away from me while still watching me. I finished my drink mix, stood up stretched, and yawned, and I swear the damn wolf yawned with me. I decided to take a nap before I took care of what I came here to do. I slid the meal tray back into the Mylar bag, set the stove on the ground at the back of my to cool, closed and locked the back of my, crawled into the driver's seat, reclined it as much as I could, and drifted off. Flashback, Major M, at the Moscow hospital. Before I left the hospital, I decided to check on Sergeant Blaine's records because I wouldn't put it past him and Sergeant Reynolds to try to pull a fast one on me. So I hauled my butt and my bags to the hospital records department and ran into a problem since no one there spoke enough English to understand me, and I still didn't speak enough Russian to make them understand what I wanted. I gave up on the effort and decided it would be better if I went to my hotel, dropped off my bags, and asked them if they knew of an interpreter I could hire. I hauled my butt and my bags out the front of the hospital, hailed a cab, tossed my big bag in the trunk, and gave the driver a card with the hotel's address on it. We started toward my hotel and once again ran into another Moscow traffic jam. I was tired as hell and wanted to get to my hotel, so I pulled out some money, waved it in the air so the driver could see it in the mirror, and ordered, "Hotel as fast as you can." I guess he understood what I meant by my actions and words, but I was shocked when the cab driver jumped the cab onto the sidewalk and floored it. The cab leapt ahead like a rocket taking off. The ever-present pedestrians on the sidewalk dodged for their lives and shouted what I could only assume were vulgarities at us. I tried to yell at him to stop, but I guess he didn't understand and drove in an even more extreme and haphazard manner. I felt sorry for one old woman who dropped her bags because he ran the bags the over. I had enough, closed my eyes, and hoped like hell he didn't kill someone because I was sure I would somehow be blamed for it. After about 15 minutes of sheer terror, the cab stopped. The driver said something. I opened my eyes, and we were at the hotel, albeit on the sidewalk in front of the hotel. I tossed the crazy driver the money I waved. We both exited the taxi. He opened the trunk, and a young man came and took my bag. I was glad I didn't have to carry the big bag anymore until the scumsucker took off running down the sidewalk with my big bag. I yelled, "Hey, I thought you were with the hotel." It was too late since the young thief and my big bag were gone. Thank God I still had my carry-on bag with my computer. If I had lost it, I was sure the old man would have shipped my butt back to the bony bitch and Thule. Another man come out of the hotel, looked at me, and said something in Russian. I stared at him and complained, "Doesn't anyone in the country speak English?" He beat himself on the chest like a gorilla and proudly announced, "I speak good English. Where is your bag?" I pointed down the sidewalk and answered, "Some hoodlum took it." He proudly beat his chest again and announced, "Yes, hoodlum's very bad around here. However, for enough dollars I might get bag back." I nodded my head and answered, "That would be very good, but first I want to get to my room, and then I was wondering if you know of an interpreter for hire." I couldn't believe it when he beat his chest again like a gorilla. I assumed it must have been some sort of Russian tradition I didn't know about, and answered, "Yes. I take you to your room so you rest, then I look for bag and interpreter." Thank God there wasn't a problem with the check-in. I figured this being Russia, it would be some sort of Mongolian cluster shit, but instead it went smoothly. The bellhop took me up to my room, opened the door, turned to me, beat on his chest again, and questioned, "Room is nice." I had seen better, but compared to the hellhole in Thule I'd just escaped from, this was paradise. I mimicked the bellhop, beat on my chest, and said, "Duh, Room is nice. He laughed and said, duh, we teach to speak Russian soon. Then he held out his hand. I knew what he wanted, so I gave him a couple bucks. For once he didn't beat on his chest, he smiled and said, I go to find bag and interpreter. Once I was sure he left, I double-locked the door, opened my computer bag, pulled out my TSCM scanner, technical surveillance countermeasures, a scanner to detect audio or video bugs in a room. It vibrates when it locates a bug so it doesn't alert the persons who planted the bugs, and swept the room for bugs. Just as I assumed, it vibrated in my hand so much it reminded me of the buzz of the bony bitch's vibrator. This room had the hell bugged out of it. I looked closer, figured out where the cameras were, and strategically moved the closed tree to block the video. I sat down the chair to rest, and to figure out what the hell I was going to tell the old man about Sergeant Blaine going AWOL. I must have fallen asleep because the next thing I knew a knock on the door woke me up. I rose out of my chair, walked to the door, and demanded, who the hell is there? The answer came from a woman's voice. You needed an interpreter? I opened the door and was shocked. There stood one of the most beautiful women I had ever seen. I needed to give the bellhop a hell of a tip. I sure hoped like hell she could speak English, so I invited her in. She sat at the table across from me, twirled her hair, and we began to talk. Flashback, Masha, in Moscow. I secretly followed the major to the hospital records department, where because of his lack of skill in the Russian language, he was stymied. However, it did give me a great idea. I called the office and put my plan in motion. Then I tried to call my Jack, but unlike him, he didn't answer. I pondered what could cause his lack of response, but couldn't discern the reason. I stopped by Ben's room, found Tatiana was still there and still in a state of extreme depression. I decided I would tell her about my plan with the major in hopes it would ameliorate her depression. I said, Tatiana, would you like to know our plans for the major? When she turned to me, I could tell she had cried more, and she sadly questioned, will your plans keep Ben from going to a Siberian gulag? I smiled and tried my best to paint a rose-colored picture. That is my plan, because we both know if Ben goes to a Siberian gulag, Jack will accompany him. The major has less skill in the Russian language than Jack, so I decided we would use Victoria as an interpreter for him. Tatiana shuddered, but then smiled and answered, I am glad I did not get that assignment. The thought of working under the major is revolting. I continued, yes, I am sure the major probably has her clothes off by now and is interviewing her. But she is good at her job and will get every bit of information from the major without him realizing it. With that information, we can assure that neither of our men ends up in a Siberian gulag. Tatiana finally smiled and suggested, perhaps we could contrive a way for the major to be sent to a Siberian gulag. I laughed and then informed Tatiana about how General Donaldson had assigned the major to the same room in Thule as Colonel Maggie and even relayed some of the stories we had received. She looked much happier, so I finished with, if we are very good and extremely lucky, General Donaldson will assign the major to Thule again with Colonel Maggie. Now I need to head to my apartment and pick up some food to make Jack salad for tonight. Tatiana looked at me, and I was surprised when she questioned, I wager you called Jack today, and he didn't answer? I gave her a confused look, wondered if she had become a mind reader, and answered, yes, I did. But how did you know that? Tatiana answered, Masha, I tried to make you understand, and I failed. If Jack is taking Ben's place in training today, he is in for nothing short of Hades. Ben told me about what they did to him before we met and before he was wounded. It bordered on outright abuse. Jack will need much more than a salad to eat for dinner tonight. He will need a full meal with soup, meat, and potatoes. I shook my head and questioned, Tatiana, are you certain of this? Tatiana crossed her heart and answered, yes, Masha. He will be very sore tonight, and even worse tomorrow. Take this and give it to him tonight, and another dose in the morning. I looked at the pills, realized they were Vicodin, and questioned again, you are certain of this? Tatiana nodded her head, closed my hands over the Vicodin, and answered, yes, Masha. Jack will have traveled through a crucible today. I took the pills, left the hospital, and decided this time I needed to listen to Tatiana. So I stopped by the local market on the way home, purchased more food than I had ever before purchased, and rushed home to prepare dinner before Jack arrived. Flashback, Jack, in Moscow. Son of a bitch. My butt was dragging 9 ways to Sunday. I assumed that I would be training with my Spetsnaz team like I had when Ben was here, and I certainly made an butt out of me. Hell, when Ben was here, it was virtually a walk in the park compared to today. I complained to Yuri, you mother scumsuckers almost killed me today with the training. He laughed and answered, Jack, I warned you that you were taking Ben's place in the training. We didn't do anything to you that Ben had not already endured. I continued my complaints. I never saw you do any of this to Ben when I trained with you before. He continued his laughter and replied, Jack, my friend, when you trained with us we took it easy on you because Ben told us he would kick our butts again if we did not. However, as you would say when the Koshka, cat, is away, the mish, mouse, will play. I took me a second to figure out the Russian, then I empirically stated, I am going to kick Ben's, but when he comes back. By the way, do you have any idea how he left the hospital and where the hell he went? Yuri translated what I said to the rest of the men, and they all laughed. I complained, what the hell is so damn funny? Yuri continued his annoying as hell laughter and answered, Jack, none of us can kick Ben's, but so how do you propose to do what we cannot? I grinned at him and replied, because I'm an older and a sneakier than hell scumsucker. Yuri translated that to the other men, and they had another round of laughter at my expense. Then one of the men interrupted the joke when he said something to Yuri. Yuri replied. Then he looked at me and said, Jack, you wanting to kick Ben's, but has given us an idea. If you have any hope of performing such a mission, then we need to practice full contact martial arts immediately and daily. I groaned and asked, what if I refuse? Yuri looked at me and answered, then your butt will be kicked many times over. I got a slight reprieve because it took some time to get into the protective gear for the full contact martial arts, but the delay was too short. The training started, and the next thing I knew, I was waking up with Yuri laughing at me. I questioned, what the hell happened? Yuri checked my eyes and stated, Jack, your butt was kicked, and you passed out. Then he said something in Russian. The medic came over, checked me over, and talked with Yuri. I asked, well, what the hell did he say? Yuri answered, Jack, you did a good job today, but you need to go to home your future wife. Have a great dinner and rest up for tomorrow. I had a great idea and answered, well, Yuri, I hate to spoil your day, but I will need to meet with Major Mike tomorrow. Yuri annoyed the hell out of me when he laughed and shot down my plan. Jack, do not worry about the Major. He has many meetings scheduled tomorrow with our officers. They want to know what he did to cause Ben to leave without permission. That reminded me, so I asked again, you never did tell me what you know about Ben leaving. Yuri looked serious as he said, Jack, all we know is what the hospital told us. Ben left over his concerns of your Major returning. We have no idea how he left the hospital because the last information we received was that he could not walk. I wasn't so sure that Yuri didn't lie to me, but I was glad as hell to be done with the torture for today. I asked, so how the hell am I getting back to Masha's apartment? Yuri gave me an evil grin and answered, Jack, that is an excellent question. Because of the terrible traffic in Moscow, we are running back to our barracks and will drop you at your future wife's apartment on the way. I couldn't believe it, more running after all the shit we did today. I knew better than to complain anymore, because I didn't want Yuri to make us double time it, like he did earlier when I complained about the running. Thank God this time it was an easy trot. I noticed the traffic jams on the streets we ran along and realized Yuri was right. If I had taken a taxi, I would have never gotten home. However, the most surprising part of the run was how the Moscow residents reacted to us. When they heard us coming, they lined both sides of the sidewalk and clapped and cheered as we ran between them. It was nice to be treated like the heroes we were, unlike how I was used to being treated in America. One woman even handed a bottle of vodka to Yuri, who unscrewed the top, took a big drink, and passed it back. I was thankful for it when it hit my hand and took such a big swig it made me cough. The man behind me clapped me on the back, and I passed the bottle to him. I recognized the street that Masha's apartment was on. Then Yuri said something in Russian. I figured out it was double time when the others ran past me, and somehow I found the energy to keep up with the younger farts. We finally stopped in front of the entrance to Masha's apartment, where a full bottle of vodka appeared as if by magic. Yuri handed it to me and said, Jack, we are satisfied with your work today. Take this bottle of vodka and finish it all tonight. It will help you be prepared for more of the same tomorrow. Now give us your weapon and your pack. I was glad to be through carrying the AK and the pack and gave them to one of the men. I barely made it up the stairs to Masha's apartment without crawling, but had to stop several times to fortify myself with swigs from the vodka. I rang the buzzer. Masha opened the door and... Flashback, Tatiana, in Moscow. Masha's talk earlier did help me to feel better, especially when she told me about the terrible time the Major had in Thule. I finished cleaning Ben's empty room, gathered the scrubs he wore in the hospital. He refused to wear a gown because it let his butt hang out for all to see, and decided to take them home with me because they smelled like Ben and I really missed him. Even though Masha tried to convince me that Ben's leaving wasn't my fault, I still felt that if I had not lied to him, he would not have left. It was a long, slow, and lonely trip home for me tonight. The lights of Moscow seemed so much dimmer than yesterday, and then a slight snow began to fall. I sure hoped that wherever Ben was, he was warm. Flashback, Jennifer, at the military hospital. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't because my burns hurt really bad. Then I realized that with all that happened, I hadn't had any pain medication in a very long time. DOH, no wonder I hurt. I pushed the call button, my night nurse came in, and I asked, my burns hurt very badly. Could I get something for pain? She smiled at me and answered, let me check your chart for the last time you were medicated, and I will see if I can bring you something. I anxiously waited until she came back and informed me, "Sorry, Jennifer, but it says you received your pain medication 2 hours ago, so we need to wait for another 2 hours before we can give you more." I looked at my watch, then determined something wasn't right since I knew it had been a lot more than 2 hours since my last pain medication. I wanted to complain, but decided to first consider what happened. So instead I smiled and answered, "Sorry, it must be my fault. I must have gotten the time confused." She answered, "Don't worry, that happens all the time. I will bring you your medication in 2 hours." She left, but I knew something wasn't right. Flashback, Glenn, going home from the military hospital. What a hell of a day. It wasn't often that I got outplayed, but I sure felt that happened today. That nurse of Jennifer's was a repeater. I knew I couldn't do anything to her right now, but someday in some way she would pay for all that she did to my family. The final straw was when she still wanted Jennifer to stay with her for 2 months. The only redeeming part of that was knowing how Jennifer was going to make her life hell. I grinned, stopped by the BX, and picked up the item that Jennifer requested. I never in my life dreamed I would ever purchase one of these for Jennifer. Then I wondered if she would understand how it fit. Oh well, tomorrow I would find out. Flashback, Alexei at home. I was bored because father had not discovered my new ruse of burying things around the house. Instead, he was in their room hiding while Chow Mein still hid under the television stand. I considered what I could do next to irritate my parents and came up with a wonderful idea. I sat up on my haunches like the dog I was portraying, tipped my head back, and started off with a low guttural howl, then gradually increased the volume. Once I finished, I repeated it until father once again came out of their room and yelled, "Alexei, stop that infernal racket." I stopped, whimpered again like the dog I was emulating, and lay back down on the rug. With the door being opened to their room, Chow Mein took the opportunity to leave her hidey hole. She tried to stealthily slip past me, but I saw her, jumped up on all fours and bounded after her. She hissed and spat at me, but didn't run, which was a mistake. I got up to her, reached out and grabbed her by the tail. She let out a yowl, which actually frightened me, and then tried her best to reach and scratch me. But I knew better and kept a tight hold on her tail. She continued to yowl like a banshee and tried to reach around and scratch and bite me, but I kept tight hold on her tail and pulled so she couldn't harm me. Then next thing I knew, I felt a sharp whack on the top of my head. I was so shocked I let loose of Chow Mein's tail, and she dashed into my parents' room. I looked and saw mother with a rolled-up magazine in her hand. She had actually struck me. She drew back her arm again, but I knew what was coming, so I ran into my room with her in pursuit as she yelled, "Alexei, if you want to act like a dog, get back here, so I can punish you like a dog." I beat her into my room, crawled under my bed, and growled at her. Mother kneeled down, looked under the bed, shook the rolled-up magazine at me, and demanded, "Alexei, get out here and take your punishment for hurting Chow Mein." I growled and snapped at her. Then I came up with an even better idea and... Flashback, Mira and Ira, in Israel. After Akam the Obese posed his solution to the conundrum of our primary Baker Street irregular assaulting us with the BB gun of retribution, I looked at Dr. Watson and questioned, "Dr. Watson, could my assumption of our primary Baker Street irregular's hormonal balance again becoming unbalanced be flawed?" Dr. Watson infuriated me when she replied, "Sherlock, your deduction is most certainly seriously flawed because you have concentrated your analysis on the one act of using the BB gun of retribution against our corporeal selves, and have ignored our primary Baker Street irregular's lack of medically attributable symptoms. We cannot afford any further failed deductions. Therefore, I am relieving you of your role as Sherlock Holmes." I had grown incessantly tired of Ira's continued desire to steal my role as Sherlock, so I decided to act on it, and replied, "Ira, I no longer wish to play this incipient, irritating, and irascible game. I am going to leave, and I am going to ruminate over this debacle, and for sustenance I will consume a Menthus." My continued insistence to annex the role of Sherlock Holmes from Mira has caused a kerfuffle and dumped the pomacious fruit barrel. My sister Mira left in a fit of pique and claimed she would consume a Menthus. I called after her, "Mira, please do not leave." She placed her digits into her auditory canals and continued her departure. Akam the Obese cheers, "Thank God. It is about time that the foolishness of Sherlock Holmes has departed my house." I trained my ocular units on him, and I am suddenly encapsulated by an excellent idea. Flashback, Todd, on the island. Lou came back with some chickens. I could only guess that some were brought to the island in the past, had escaped, and were now breeding in the wild. I knew how to clean chickens, so I took them from her and began to clean and pluck them. I still wasn't sure that Lou was comfortable with what transpired between Lynn and me, so I closely watched the women as I continued to clean the chickens. I finished cleaning them, washed them, and put them on a couple sticks over the fire. Lynn came over, smiled at me, and said, "Thank you for taking care of the chickens so Lou and I could talk." We are going to the lake to wash while they cook and would like for you to accompany us. We headed to the lake. The women stripped off their clothes and dove in. Without a single bit of reluctance, I did the same. Lou swam over to me, embraced me, and said something to me. Lynn translated. Lou says that I had my fun, now it is her turn. Any concern about bad feelings between Lou and Lynn was put to rest as Lou and I. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.